Hello, AR Medcom. This is Lieutenant Colonel Randall. I'm your Deputy Staff Judge Advocate. Coming here today talking to you all about LGBT Pride Month. This is the month of June. This is the EO observance for the month of June, and this is our presentation for that observance. We'll go over the history here in a moment, but I've noticed in the commands I've been in that a lot of times Pride Month just sort of goes by. No one really does a lot for it. No one necessarily puts up a lot of media about it. I think that's unfortunate. Obviously, there's a little bit of controversy with this topic because it is so new. But it is an observance. I think we should, do what we're supposed to do as soldiers. So we're here to do our duty and have a great observation. So without further ado, let's get this going. Pride Month. Okay, so let's get to it. I've got for you a video clip to start this off. It's from a Peabody Award-winning documentary that deals with homosexuality during World War II. So it has, testimonies from soldiers, etc. And this is part of its trailer to the film.
Is an act specifically denounced as an offense in violation of Article of War 93 and is punishable by dishonorable discharge and confinement at hard labor in a federal penitentiary for 5 years.
I think we reacted in a paranoid fashion. We all became very afraid that something was going to happen.
Do you believe that homosexuality is compatible or incompatible with military service?
Incompatible. Incompatible. Open homosexuality in a unit setting is incompatible.
All right, just to give you a little background, DoD actually started observing June as Pride Month in 2012. So it's been a long time. I bet a lot of people didn't know that. No, I didn't know that. My last command, the 80th Training Command, we celebrated Pride Month for the first time in that command's history, in the headquarters at least. And we did that approximately 2016. So that had been 4 years into the observation of Pride Month. But be that as it may, I'm not sure where we are with AR Medcom, but we are doing the observance this year. So why June? June marks the Stonewall riots, which are considered the tipping point, the reason, the start of the modern gay rights movement in America in 1969. Basically, what happened was the police in New York City were targeting so-called gay clubs at that time, and the owners and the customers felt like it was harassment and that they were targeted specifically for, a litany of things like a liquor license violation, some sort of other sort of low-level thing. Anyway, it got to the point where they actually started rioting in 1969. So that's where we get June as Pride Month. All right. Now, I wanted to really highlight Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because for a lot of folks that are fairly new in the military, they don't really even know that much about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It's sort of a way back in the past type thing when it's really pretty doggone recent. Personal anecdote, I can remember when we were still separating soldiers who, after an investigation, it showed that they were gay. And I know that I've participated in those separations. Very unfortunate. They have a mechanism now where folks can go back and get their discharges upgraded to an honorable. But, that was the policy and really affected operations. And it was something that we all dealt with. And then the repeal, obviously, that was something we all dealt with as well. So just talking about what was Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Well, in 1993, with the election of Bill Clinton, there was some intensive scrutiny over gays in the military. Now, RAND, the corporation, they do a lot of research for the military. They came out in 1993 as well with a study that showed that homosexuals pose no more of a risk, security risk, etc., than anyone else. There was no, at least, policy reason why they could not serve in the military. Well, obviously, military leaders are very conservative. People had different opinions, etc., so they came up with a sort of a middle ground, and that was don't ask, don't tell. So folks could come in the military, they could be gay, they just could not be openly gay. And if there was some indicia that they were a homosexual, like maybe social media postings, their web pages, etc., then the command by policy had to initiate an investigation. If it was substantiated, the soldier would be separated. In other words, you could be gay, you just could not be openly gay. And so that was the policy all the way up until 2010. So again, not that long ago. There was a lot of training, a lot of fanfare that dealt with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Well, why was that? Okay, so 2010 forward, you could serve openly in the military and not be separated. Now we obviously, the slide shows it took a year for the implementation, but even before that, there were policies by DA that you could not initiate, you could not really even enforce Don't Ask, Don't Tell after that 2010. So it was dead basically at that point. You just didn't do anything. You waited for the implementation. And so at that point forward, you could be a homosexual and you could serve openly in the military. Now, how often do we see that today? Well, in services like the JAG Corps or AMED, you tend to see it more often. So I used to be an instructor at the Army JAG School. Well, we did have young soldiers coming in. They were attorneys and they had same-sex spouses or, girlfriend, boyfriends. You saw it quite often. Now, would you see that in other branches? Probably not as much, right? There's still a social stigma involved with being part of the LGBT community, and that's why we're here today, right? So that brings us to the T in the LGBT observance, which is transgender. Now, transgender policy has gone a flip-flop in the last couple of years. Now, folks, again, if you're just joined the military, you don't know any different, but in 2016, there was a lot of training, again, very similar to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, where we're going to allow folks that are transgender to serve openly. And what does that mean to be transgender? That means that you have a mental condition called gender dysphoria, where you have an innate anxiety or disbelief, in your biological gender. Okay, so fast forward to 2019, the policy's flipped. So the policy right now, and the court cases are all obviously settled at this point, but you cannot serve openly as transgender if you were not already grandfathered in. Okay, so right now, what's the policy? It is, if you have gender dysphoria, that is a service disqualifying condition from a recruiting standpoint. There are waiver provisions available, but right now, that if you have gender dysphoria, you cannot join. If you came out as transgender between 2016 to 2019, when the 2016 policy was in effect, fine. You're grandfathered in, you can serve openly for the rest of your career. If you just come out now, and under the new policy, if you come out as transgender and you have gender dysphoria, then you get treated on a case-by-case basis. But they did establish a bright line. There are no gender reassignment surgeries in the military. If you require reassignment, then you will be discharged. That is the policy, kind of like the English Reformation. It went from transgenders can serve openly, now they can't. Well, with the next administration, it could flip again. So stay tuned on transgender. Now let's talk about some success stories. So Major General Tammy Smith, she was the first openly gay general officer in the military, and she is a member of the Army Reserve. So that's pretty interesting, I thought. So I put her on here. And then Eric Fanning, again, the Army. He is the first openly gay service secretary. So again, very interesting. It's in the Army as well. So I thought that was interesting. Put that in there. And, with an observance, we always like to, hear the stories. Let's talk some contributions, some stories. So I went through, did some research, and we've got some interesting folks to talk about here. So the first one is, obviously, this gentleman is on the cover of Time magazine in 1975. Had no idea. Sergeant Leonard Matlovic. He came out openly as gay. Okay, in 1975, do you think you could serve openly as gay? No, right? This is way before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So he ended his career by coming out as, trying to help others, bringing obviously publicity to the issue to try to change the policy. So this gentleman, Vietnam veteran, highly decorated, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, et cetera, very, very well thought of soldier. Unfortunately, he did die, relatively soon after that. About a decade later, he died of complications due to AIDS in 1988. So very, very interesting fella. His gravestone actually does not have his name on it. He had inscribed on there, I was decorated for killing 2 men, and I was discharged for loving 1. So that's pretty powerful stuff. So our next person to talk about is Fannie Mae Clackham. And so this is a really cool case because it has a legal angle. So I like this one. So she's the first person that openly challenged her discharge for being a homosexual in the military. And so basically what happened is she's a member of the Air Force Reserve. She's obviously, they're doing a lot of missions dealing with World War II and then thereafter with the Korean War. So she got caught up in a sting operation by the Air Force, who they set up her and her I guess colleague / lover. They set them up in a hotel room, and then they sort of raided it, and they then they used that in interrogation, say, okay, we're going to get rid of them. Well, they got offered a discharge, and they said, no, we want a court-martial. Well, the Air Force just discharged them anyway. And so they ended up suing in the Court of Claims for back pay and, their retirement time, because they didn't get due process, and the court agreed. And so they actually got back pay, everything. And then they openly challenged this finding by the court. So I thought that was really cool. That was a cool case. And then our last one, this is the first openly transgender infantryman. So Staff Sergeant Patricia Keene, she came out after 15 years of service. So again, another very highly decorated soldier, Bronze Star, Combat Infantryman Badge, all the multiple deployments, etc. So she came out as transgender. She is going through the gender reassignment process, kind of a poster child for success story of transgender in the military. She's been treated very well. She speaks very highly of the military. Obviously not happy with the current policy and the direction the military is going. But, she's one of those that is grandfathered in. And so she continues to serve. She has over 20 years now. Okay, so we have come to the end of our journey on this Equal Opportunity Observance. I'd like to end the program with a speech by the former Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter, who talks about the contributions that have been made by LGBT service members to our country and to our defense.
4 years after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, following years and years of gay and lesbian service members having to hide who they are, today we take pride in how they're free to serve their country openly. Tolerant.
And so that's what we have for our observance. So I think what you've seen here is over time, we've sort of moved toward more and more and more inclusion. And that inclusion makes us a better Army. And I know that it's our younger generation, the younger soldiers come in, they're just going to expect that in an Army they believe in. And that is all we have. Thank you.